Hi, future Catherine here for anyone who's following along on video and wondering why my outfit's about to change. Today on Main Street Makers, we're talking with Tanya Patterson. She's the owner of the real estate firm Patterson Investments located in the San Francisco Bay Area. Tanya talks about how she made the leap from the high-tech world into real estate and why that decision started with one simple goal: to spend more time with her kids. Tanya shares how a weekend hobby of touring open houses turned into a decades-long career spanning residential and commercial real estate. You'll hear her practical advice on building a referral-based business, including the underrated power of handwritten thank you notes, and why cookie-cutter approaches don't always work in an industry as broad as real estate. She breaks down different paths within the field, from sales to property management to transaction coordination, and explains how identifying your strengths and outsourcing what you don't enjoy can lead to long-term success. So, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to Main Street Makers, a monthly podcast that features real, local small business owners who have transformed their passions into profitable businesses. Learn from fellow small business owners on how they overcome challenges, find opportunities, and create thriving operations that make our neighborhoods more vibrant, connected places to live. This podcast is brought to you by NAV, the business credit platform that believes every small business owner deserves the chance to succeed. Now, let's get to this week's show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Main Street Makers. Today, I'm excited to welcome Tanya Patterson, a real estate broker and chief executive officer of Patterson Investments, which is a real estate firm.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So first off, I'd love for you to just share about your business, how you started it. You have a really beautiful and meaningful reason why you started it. So I'd love for you to just share that with us.
Sure. So I started my business because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. That's how it started. I come from the high-tech industry. There are a lot of demands in that industry, 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes until 7 o'clock at night. And so I thought, what can I do to spend more time with my kids and still have an impact in society in some way? And so I thought, real estate would be a great opportunity to spend time with the kids and also give back, helping individuals and business owners build wealth through real estate investments, whether it's an individual residential purchase, commercial purchase, or investing in multiple properties.
How did you discover real estate? Because you mentioned that you had been in the high-tech industry before. What was involved in that transition?
Yeah, when I was pregnant with my oldest son, I was still in high tech. And I watched other mothers just trying to figure it out and running and daycare and trying to drop their kids off and be on time to pick their kids up. And I thought, I don't think I want that. So the transition was, what do I really like to do? And what I would do on the weekends is go and look at open homes. It was one of my favorite pastimes. And, I would go through different areas in the valley and look at homes and decor. And I thought, I could do this and I could enjoy doing this. So that's what happened. It started out in residential real estate, just going to open homes as a hobby that became a job. From there, it evolved. So I started in residential. I did that for about 10 years and I still do it. And then a lot of my clients wanted to invest in commercial real estate. So I started doing commercial real estate about 15 years ago. And so I've been doing commercial and residential sales now for 26 years. And whether it's an individual property or individual commercial or whatever it might be that my client is looking for. However, I will say, once COVID happened, I shifted more to the real estate side. A lot of challenges came into place with commercial real estate, especially offices, and people not being able to afford the office rent. Clients weren't able to show up anymore, so on and so forth. So I shifted back to, I would say, more on the residential side with COVID.
Yeah, love that. You also mentioned that you're really passionate about helping people build wealth through real estate. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I can. I tell people it doesn't matter what job you have. you really should, and this is just my opinion, you should invest in real estate. It doesn't have to be in this state or in this area because the Bay Area is very, very expensive and most people cannot afford the Bay Area. So I tell them, the Midwest, the East Coast, the southern states, you can certainly invest in real estate there because at the end of the day, your goal is cash flow, creating cash flow. Some people invest out of state and live on the cash flow in a high-rise apartment here in the Bay Area. And so as opposed to trying to save money, you're a single person and you're making, I don't want to say a salary, but a low salary for the Bay Area. And it takes you forever to save the money via 401k or whatever means, or stock, bonds, or whatever you're doing to get in down payment for a property. You can just live in a really, really nice place by investing outside of California. So it could be residential or commercial. You can buy a single family, a duplex, a triplex, or fourplex, and those properties fall within the residential purchasing side, which means you still get to benefit from the interest rates for residential purchases. It isn't until you get to a 5-unit that you have to worry about the commercial interest rate, which is higher and has other challenges with it as well. So I just tell people, start where you are. If you can afford to buy in the Bay Area, let's do it. If you can't, it's okay. You start where you are.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. What is your client base like, if you don't mind me asking? Is it individuals? Are there business owners who are looking to add that as an additional revenue stream? What does that kind of look like?
Hi, that's a good question. It is all of the above. It is individuals, single, married, business owners, some professional athletes, the entertainment industry, not as much. I only have a couple. And just whomever would like to purchase real estate and secure their future and pass the money down through generational wealth building.
Yeah, a big mix of people. How did you go about building that client base, especially in the very beginning? Because we know that we've talked to other people in the real estate space, and that can be quite the challenge.
Yeah, so starting out just starting small, starting where you are. I started out on the residential side and I started teaching classes maybe 15 years ago on how to build wealth. And so people would attend my classes. And through those trainings, I got a client base. One young lady in particular, she said, when I'm ready, I'll definitely call you. And she did. And she's now retired. She's 50 years old, single, never been married. She was laid off of her job maybe 6 months ago. And she said, okay, I'm done. That's it. I don't have to do this anymore. And we started out small with her. It wasn't, $5-10 million purchases, not even $2 million. She's quite comfortable. I think the classes, the training, and then the word of mouth and referrals from there.
Yeah, I love that she was able to retire so early. That's really inspiring. So it sounds like it was a mix of classes, and then it sounds like you also have a very loyal client base that have stayed with you throughout the years, and that helps.
Yes, I do, which is very helpful. My business is mostly referral based, which is really nice. Yeah, and not in the beginning, though. In the beginning, I would say the first couple of years, I had to work really hard trying to figure it out. I worked in a real estate office, and we door knocked one weekend. I said, I can't do this. This is not going to work for me. One weekend we did cold calling. I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I only did it twice. And so I decided early on that the referral network would be my best avenue into being successful as a real estate agent and broker now. So I joined different conferences that spoke to building your business based on referrals. And I attended those conferences for 3 or 4 years. And once I learned the system, I implemented the system and never looked back. Yeah.
Are you able to share any advice from how you built that referral network? Like, were there things that you took from those conferences, from your experience, that have worked really well for you?
Yeah, early on, what I used to do, and I plan to do again, which I think is extremely effective, is sending thank you notes. People minimize the importance of a simple note. We don't get thank you notes in the mail anymore, handwritten thank you notes. And so I'm going back to just sending maybe 5 a day just to say it was great to see you. Thank you so much for lunch. Thank you so much for meeting me, or whatever the occasion is. But a thank you note, they go so far. And some
I
people
love
keep
that.
them, and that's the other thing. It's not just the act of doing it, but some people keep them on their desk. I keep my thank you notes. And so you're always present in that person's mind because that thank you note is sitting on their desk. And they're like, oh, I have a referral for her. I think years ago, when business cards were popular, I would attach a business card and they would have that. But I don't use business cards anymore. Everything's like electronic. And so I think thank you notes are more important now than they were before because of that reason. Because it really
Yeah,
is a business card. Yeah.
right. Just going the
Mhm.
extra mile, almost like back to basics in a way.
Absolutely. We missed that. I mean, I sent 4 thank you notes a couple of weeks ago, and one of the ladies said, "Oh my gosh, I haven't gotten a thank you card in years." She said, "Only Christmas cards." And so, yeah, thank you cards go a long way.
That's amazing. Um,
Thank
I want to switch gears a little bit because we have been talking a bit about your early days.
you.
Was
Mhm.
there anything in those early days of starting business that was particularly challenging for you?
I think what was challenging for me is watching so many people do real estate the same way, sort of like a cookie cutter syndrome. I made that up. I think real estate is a very individualized industry because no two agents or brokers are the same. I tell people find your why and find your passion in the business and work with that. Some people love open houses and they're very successful at that. Do that. Some people love working with sellers. Do that. Some people love commercial real estate, and maybe they don't like the office side, but maybe they like the manufacturing side. Do that. I think what happens in real estate is most people get their real estate license and they do business the same way everyone else is doing it, and we're all different. And I think that is not the way to go necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, real estate is so broad, and so it's important to be intentional about designing something that will actually work for you.
Right. I mean, property management is another example. Property management allows you to create an income monthly. Real estate is commission based. Property management is similar to investing in real estate. You have, they call it doors, say 200 properties, 200 doors, and you know how much money you're getting every month. You have your expenses, you have your income. And of course, it'll change here and there as people move out and move in, you add properties, and so on and so forth. But property management is also a great way to go in real estate that people don't think about when they get their license. They think, oh, I have to door knock and cold call and do sales. And some people are very, very successful in property management. They have 600, 700 doors. That can retire you. You can hire people to work for you. And with all of the software products that we have available, whether it's commercial or residential, you can retire on property management. You build the business up. The other thing with property management that's different from sales, it's easier to sell the company. At some point, if you decide to sell the company, you have the clients that you're selling with the company as well. If you're a larger company, you might be able to sell that company, of course, as well. But if you're a smaller company and you're not property management, it's harder to sell the company. So that is one piece that is different, being an individual business owner. So people should take that into account too. If you ever want to sell your business and you're in sales and not property management, it's a harder thing to do because I'm the business. People know me. Unless one of my sons takes over the business, which is, one is getting a PhD and one is studying for the LSAT. So I don't think that's going to happen. So,
yeah, there are a lot of different paths based off of what you need and what you excel at. Kind of on that note, you had mentioned that you've coached other aspiring business owners who are kind of motivated by the concept of freedom when they start their business. But you have also noted that, well, when you're a business owner, you're responsible for everything. And so there's not really always such a thing as clocking out. What is some of the advice that you give people who are thinking about going off on their own?
And I did this, I made this mistake. I, did not know where to start. So I started in residential and I did what people said, door knock, cold call. I only did it once, each one, but I did it. And the advice I would give people, and I do get people when they ask me, even to this day, just strangers, I say, what is your why? And what do you really love about real estate? Here are the different pieces of real estate. If you like paperwork and you love paperwork, you can be a transaction coordinator. You can start your own business. You can work from home Monday through Friday, etc. If you don't like paperwork, great, hire a transaction coordinator, but you love sales. So maybe you join some networking groups and you do that piece of it. Maybe you don't like networking necessarily, but you're really, really good at open houses, just people coming to you. You don't have to go out and create this network. They're coming to you. And so I always tell people, find your strengths and your whys and really, 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 really hone in on those things. I've had people say, well, stretch yourself and, do the uncomfortable. I respect everyone's opinion. It's not one I agree with. Because why? My opinion is pay someone to do the things you don't like to do and do the things that you do and make it fun. Because if it's fun, you're going to be successful at it, have a good time at it. And I feel that everyone wins when you bring your best self to the party. And that's just my own opinion. Others say stretch yourself and, do the uncomfortable and all of those things. And I say, for me, it's like, why? If you have something you're really, really good at, why not just do that?
Yeah, that's super valid. You're right. If you're having fun, you're just going to kind of keep going. It's a natural intrinsic motivator. Do you have a story of how you kind of discovered your path? Because I imagine you used that process for yourself, kind of like finding your joy and following that and trying to outsource things that you didn't feel as good at or didn't enjoy as much.
Yeah. For me, it's taken a long time for me to figure this out. So this is why I mentor people. I'm happy to share quickly because it took me a little longer to figure it out. And I think it's also staying in your comfort zone in terms of a territory. You find an area that you like to sell in and you just work that area. You just work it really, really hard and you just stay there and stay comfortable. I think when you try to work in too many industries as far as areas, it gets complicated. I have clients, and I've done this, that wanted properties, 200 miles away. And so, I got in the car and did the drive. I wouldn't advise that. I would say find a really, really good agent or broker, partner with them and refer that person out. Don't try and do everything. Do what brings you joy. Stay in your comfort zone. Stay in your location. So I have, for example, for me, I have 2 offices, one in San Jose, one in San Francisco. And I have learned that I'd like to stay within those areas. Not necessarily, too far out. For example, Sacramento, I try not to go to Sacramento only on special occasions. So rarely I'll go out to those areas depending on the situation. But for the most part, I'd like to stick between San Jose and San Francisco. And I think it's really important not to stretch yourself too thin so you can bring your best value and your best self.
Yeah. I love that. So for you, it was really about like location, was a big one. You've also mentioned that building a team was a challenge for you in the past, and now your business is just yourself. Do you have any learnings from that, or like lessons for other people about whether it's better for them to just be and go solo or kind of bring other people onto the team because both can be successful?
Right. Yeah. So I've spoken to many managers of larger companies, smaller companies. We've had this conversation. And the reality is, 20% of the agents do 80% of the work. Most of the agents, it's like any other industry, really. Most of the agents are not doing well. They're doing 2 to 3 deals a year. And maybe it's by choice. Maybe they have another job or kids at home and they're part-time, and that's okay. But even with the full-time agents, 20% of the agents are doing most of the work. So what happens is, usually those 20% of the agents know the business and they don't really need management that much. Maybe they have a question or 2 here and there. It's the 80% that need a lot of work, but they're not producing a lot. And I find that sometimes no matter what you teach them, no matter how much you try to help them, some people just want the money to fall in their lap. And they don't want to really work for it. They want the success, that they see other people having, but they don't want to put in the work because real estate is work. You can work and not get paid for it. And some agents, they go through that once or twice and they're out. It's like, I'm not going to waste my time and I don't know if I'm going to get paid. And I respect that. I get it. It's a tough position to be in. I was speaking to an agent about that yesterday. We have a job that sometimes can be thankless. If you're an appraiser, whether the property appraises or not, you get paid. If you're an inspector, whether the property sells or not, you get paid. But the 2 people that do not get paid necessarily are the real estate agents and brokers and the lenders. But the lenders are working from their computers now. They're in their office or at home. The real estate agent and broker is out in the field in traffic. They're meeting the inspectors. They're meeting the appraisers. They're meeting the agents and clients on the other side. And there is a lot of work, communication through email, phone calls, text messages, and you may not get paid for that. So I understand that it is not for everyone. And some people it's just not a good fit. So I would say, and my recommendation would be to recognize that as soon as possible for both the manager and the agent. If you don't want to do this, it's okay. Just move on to something that it brings you joy.
Yeah, kind of going back to what you were saying before, like just choose your path, know which one is good for you. Yeah.
Right. You have many areas of real estate, as I mentioned. You have property management, and you have transaction coordinating, you have residential sales, and you have commercial sales, and you have commercial leasing, and you have residential leasing, and you have all of these different components. And most of the time, one of those is a good fit. Sometimes none of those are a good fit, and that's okay too. I think the point is to recognize that as soon as possible, so that you can move on to what is good for you. So,
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
connecting back to one of the things you were saying that you can do a lot of work and not get paid for it. What were
Mhm.
your first few years like financially, especially as you were kind of building the client base? Like, how are you managing your finances and like what were you focusing on?
Right. Yeah, so I had a bookkeeper early on, um, but I was really successful fast. So for 6 months, I did, the weird things, just trying to figure it out. And I had a binder with all of these notes and information that I had learned from class and things that people had told me that made them successful. So I was studying. I was just studying everything every day for 6 months. And then after that, I found my why, and I knew I loved sales, that was my area of expertise and what I enjoyed the most. And my first year, I was extremely successful, incredibly successful. My first year did really well. I did six figures
That's
right
amazing.
away.
Wow.
And that was in 1999.
Wow. That's incredible.
hmm
Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of
So,
money back then.
yes, I mean, it's a lot of money now and a lot of money then. So,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
that's great. So it sounds like you were pretty successful off the bat, and really you just kind of needed a system in place to ensure that you could keep everything together, like with the bookkeeper.
Right, exactly. That was the main thing with real estate because you should be paying quarterly taxes. We have a different system than a W 2 employee.
Okay, that makes a ton of
So,
sense. You also
mhm.
shared that you had gotten an SBA loan. So I'd love for
Yes.
you to talk to us about, first off, just like what did you need it for? How did you kind of determine that you were going to go after that financing?
Yeah. So I just wanted to have a buffer for a backup. Turns out I really didn't need it. I only needed a printer, which does scanning, etc., faxing. We don't really fax anymore, but in 1999 we did. I started my company actually in 2006. So I've been on my own for 19 years. And immediately in 2006, I got the SBA loan for 40,000. I bought a printer, I bought a desk and lights and paper and all of the different things that you would need to run a business. But I really didn't need the money. I held it as a buffer, as a backup, but I really did not need it once I started my own company because I did not have a lot of the overhead expenses I had working for a firm. For me personally, it cost me more to work for a company than to have my own company. I had to pay for a desk fee. They took part of my commission.
See,
On my own, I get 100% of my commission, and the overhead is very low. For me, I did not need a huge loan amount. I think if you're not building your business based on referral, you probably do because you're doing the marketing campaigns in the neighborhoods and you're targeting different things and maybe you're going to conferences. And I did attend a few myself. But I think that's where the expense comes in is when you're doing a lot of marketing, which
that makes
which
a ton of
I
sense.
I never did a
Yeah,
whole lot of that.
referral is the cheapest acquisition method
It
for
is.
people, for sure.
It really is. It really is. It's key. And I think you have to make sure you're in the right places. And I had to learn this myself too. I think it's important to assess right away if an industry or a networking group is working for you financially. Um, I think you need to assess that right away, so you don't waste your time. And it's not always monetarily. Maybe the value is, you know, the people and maybe some advice and maybe some mentoring and maybe they're bringing something of value, but there needs to be one or the other. And you should assess that fast. That's something I had to learn. You don't want to waste time in places doing things you shouldn't be doing. I mean, you could be, I have a swimming pool. I could be in my swimming pool swimming, or at the gym, or golfing, or reading a book to educate myself more on the real estate industry and investments. And so I think it's really important to set boundaries and manage your time, and not just be busy being busy.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I do want to go back to the SBA loan piece, because it sounds like you got it as a new business.
I did.
And so I'm curious, like, how you did that and went about that, because that's not always very common for people.
Yeah. So for me, it was pretty easy. I think it was a credit union. And I think it's because I had already been in the business for, at that time, 7 years.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
I was very successful. The first 6 months, I made nothing. And after that, I just took off. And so I think the numbers showed, the bank saw the numbers and they said, nope, you're here. That's fine. Yeah, I think it was the numbers on the book. I think if you're trying to start a business without an income or a history, it might be a little harder to do, because the bank doesn't know if you're going to be successful, and then they're going to lose that money potentially, or have to chase you for you to pay that money back. And in my case, I was successful early on, and they were able to see that. I would recommend at least 2 years in the business, maybe.
Okay. I suppose it's a little different for you because even though you didn't own your own firm, you were still considered like a business because you had been a real estate agent for 7 years already. Is that accurate?
Right. That is accurate. We're independent, I guess, consultants or contractors when we work for other companies. And so we manage our own, income and taxes and so on and so forth. And I think that helps the bank determine, they've had to do so many things on their own anyhow. So, this person isn't a huge risk for us.
You had already had that track record in place. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this has been really great. I'm wondering if you have any closing words of advice for other business owners or even aspiring business owners.
Yeah, I do. I think surround yourself with people that are doing what you're doing, that you admire, and respect, and that are willing to walk with you. The company you keep is incredibly important. And if people aren't pouring into you in advice or positivity, remove yourself immediately, because energy is a powerful thing. It is powerful. And I also will say, follow your intuition. Intuition, I think it's highly underrated. I think surrounding yourself with very successful people, positive people, powerful people, people with positive energy, and just being intentional about the things that you do and setting boundaries.
That's wonderful advice. Really just making sure that your community and your network are supportive of you, because you can't do it alone, right?
It's hard to do alone. That's for sure. You don't want to do that. You can have your own business, but you don't want to do the business alone. So
that is very sound advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been really wonderful. I love how much ground you covered on designing your career and your business to be something that works for you. It's been really great having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you to our guest for sharing their story, and thank you for listening today. Keep in mind that every small business is unique, and there is no such thing as one-size-fits-all advice, so only take what you find helpful. We look forward to next time.